So you want me to take photos?
Yes. What?
All right. Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the first DH meetup of the semester. Curtis wishes he could be here, but unfortunately he's out today, so let's all send him our best well wishes so he can feel better soon and be back, especially for the next one in a couple of weeks. So today's DH meetup is the first part of a two-part series. We've designed it to promote the exciting and innovative work being done in this department, as well as drive our future collaboration in digital humanities. So by platforming and discussing the projects we've lined up this evening, we hope to share knowledge and best practices for those of you who might be thinking about pursuing DH projects of your own in the future. And we have a wonderful dinner that's going to be arriving at 5 o'clock, catered by Renzo's. So if you were here at the DH meetup at the very end of last semester, that was also the student success meeting, it's the same people, and they're going to give us a lot of good food, especially those cannoli. So, like I said, this is the first part of a two-part series, and the second part will be taking place on September 28th from 11 o'clock a.m. until 12:30 p.m. So we have dinner DH meetup and then lunch DH meetup. So we're only going to be doing these twice a month, every other week, which is the second. It's the second and fourth Thursday. So at the second DH meetup, we're going to hear pitches for DH projects that are in their very early stages and maybe not even started yet, still kind of in that nebulous phase of being planned. So we have a lot of interest in that meetup already, and we're going to circulate a sign-up form soon. So without further ado, we have a really great panel today. We're going to start with Kathleen Condray. So she's going to be presenting on the project that she's been working on with Dr. Jones and Ryan Calabretta-Sadger about mapping unheard migrant voices. So let's give her a welcome.
Let me know when I'm at 10 minutes and tell me to shut up and sit down. Okay, good.
Don't worry.
So what I think is nice about this project is it shows you how you can combine DIY, digital humanities, things that are reachable for those of us who don't have any kind of a training in programming, along with being able to outsource things to professionals, which is why we write grants, right? So let me show you a little bit about this. This is the opening page. Now we're going to switch over to the website. So you can find this website at migrantvoices.uark.edu. And the idea is we wanted to make the history of migration in Arkansas a little more accessible, right? Because I are one, I'm an Arkie, I was born in Little Rock, and a lot of people have this sentiment of, well, my family's always been here, and they just really have no connection to immigrant history. And the truth is, that's not the truth. A lot of us are actually immigrants. It's just other immigrant groups have already assimilated, and so we've forgotten about how difficult it was for them. But guess what? My research deals with Germans in the 19th century, and they absolutely were not part of Arkansas. They referred to the people who lived on the neighboring farms as the Americans. They were extremely proud of speaking German. They wanted to keep German for the next generation, and then, bam, assimilated within like 15 minutes. So that did not happen. But you know, we want people to know that that was really part of 19th century Arkansas. Come on out, guys, it's fine. So this is the opening page, and this is the very first grant we wrote. It was supported by the Humanities Office on campus with Trish Starks. And this was produced by Kest. So we gave them the content and they made this map. And I don't know, Shane, can you click on the map where there's got the little down button?
Yes, over there.
Yeah, that's good. So what happens in this map is you can see where all of these regional groups were, and then if you click on the individual, you can't just click down and do the whole tour. You can also click on the individual flags and see what was going on there. And then you can click down here on also all those little individual places. Sorry to say for my French colleagues, Paris, Arkansas was actually a hotbed of Germans. That, but anyway, then you can read a little bit about what the highlights of the history were in that area. So if you go back up to National Heritage Groups, because of, let's do French first. Because of Linda and Ryan and my research topics, we've got a variety of, so we start with the French. The French were also very connected to the Quapaws. So the grant we got from the Arkansas Humanities Council, which is the rest of this website, was to explore that a little more. Unfortunately, it was right during COVID, and the Quapaw elders could not meet with us. We didn't want to endanger them by possibly bringing COVID to them. So we're still working on that part of the website. But Linda's written a bunch about French history here, and if you scroll down, part of this was to create a walking tour of St. Peter's Cemetery. You can go back to the website and see this. There are a lot of French immigrants who are buried here, also Italian immigrants who are buried here. Not far from this, there's another little cemetery about 30 minutes away where the co-founder of St. Louis is buried in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas. So that's just an interesting little walking tour if people want to go to that. And if you will go back up to the top, we will click on under National Heritage Groups, should be German next. So these are from the German church in St. Mary, it's called St. Mary's in Altus, Arkansas. This is from the newspaper that I research on. So if you scroll past the history, we have a couple of projects here. This is one of our outsourced items. Julio Nolasco, who is working with Dave Frederick on, sorry, I turned 51 and now I'm blanking on the Tesseract project. Yes, I have no brain cells left. Phenomenal. Okay, so this is a 360 tour of St. Mary's. Let's see if we can click on like one of these 360 cameras. Yeah, that's good. So Julio fabulously came with us to St. Mary's, and we'll see if it's going to load. It probably won't because we're doing a live presentation, but you can check it out later. But it's a 360 tour of the church, and you can actually look around the church, and that is a lot of fun. Let's go to return. I think it's an issue of the brightness, but I'm not going to take the time to resolve it now. Click on one of the ones where there's just a gray one. Yeah. This is our colleague Lynn Jacobs, who's an art historian and did a lot of research on this church. And yeah, if you hit play. It's not loading. That's strange.
Click on it harder.
That's why my little Fisher-Price laptop is broken almost all the time. All right, I don't know what's going on. I tried these out this afternoon, I promise. Oh, was it big now? Okay. I promise you this works. It's just not right now. You can check this out later. But if you'll scroll down some more, keep going. We also have an interactive wine trail map. I worked with an enologist who is also at the U of A, and she shared this work that they've been doing. And if you go down, there is a wine manual if you would like to brew your own wine. This was published by the Germans in 1892. And if you scroll up now, there is, yeah, wait, go up where it says St. Mary's Church. Keep going, up. Right here, whoop, under Explore German Speaking Arkansas, St. Mary's Church. Yep, that's good. I keep forgetting to touch this. Okay, so here's where you can also find all of the interviews that Lynn Jacobs did. If you want to watch those, we made sure that we had this here for anyone who is hearing impaired. They can also read these texts. And if you scroll up, oh, sorry, that's down. I'm pushing it for you, see? Keep going. We also have keep going, there's a concert here at the bottom. There we go, oh, go up. We had a professional organist who also is a former classics major.
Jason Pennington.
Jason Pennington, who is now Jason Soji.
Soji, yeah.
And the Germans were bragging about how they had a mass where they played one of Mozart's pieces. This is in the late 19th century, and all the Americans came, and German culture superior, and that's really what they said. And so Jason did a lot of research to figure out exactly which of Mozart's church sonatas he thought it would have been. He wrote a whole treatise down here about why he thinks it's this piece of music, and then he replicated the concert at St. Mary's on that organ, and it is really cool. So you can listen to that later if you want, and then let's go back up to the top. I got like 32 seconds left. Good, 2 minutes. Keep scrolling up. Let's go to National Heritage Groups and Italian. And scroll up. Oh, okay, he did not put us in there. Keep going back up to the top, and let's go to videos then, under foodways. We did 2 foodways on the Italian, 2 foodway videos on the Italians. In Town, you know, their annual grape festival, they also have a polenta schmear, and these were done, again, yay for grants and outsourcing, these were done by journalism and grad student Patrick Kelly. They are really fabulous, and he just did an amazing job on these, especially in this one. Some of the Italians talk about, you know what the new immigrants who speak Spanish are experiencing in terms of people being prejudiced against them is exactly what we experienced as Italians. So that's interesting to see them bring that full circle there. And there is another one about the polenta schmear, and we're going to go way up to the top. I'll show you one more thing. Under videos, historical figures. We also came for this on the grant. We had undergrads and grad students make short films. I was adamant they should be around 2 minutes because TikTok, no one has any brain cells for long things now. And you can learn about important historical figures in the immigration history of Arkansas. They're separated out by all the different language groups. And we made these using Adobe Creative Cloud. If you can use a PowerPoint, you can make a film. They have all of the pictures embedded and the music embedded. It is crazy easy, and that was fun to work with the students. We did storyboarding. We talked about you can't just take any picture anywhere you find on the internet. We talked about the Library of Congress. So I think it was also a good chance to kind of teach them a little bit about how to use those historical resources. Okay, 4:15, I don't want to go over my time. Maybe we'll do questions later. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so next we're going to hear from Comsa. She's one of our French instructors, a teaching assistant professor and TA supervisor. So she has done a lot of really awesome research on Padlet. Welcome, Maria.
So this project stemmed from a student success grant that Christian Rosales, who was a graduate student and TA in our program, and I spearheaded, and we wanted to sort of investigate how Padlet would work in the classroom and whether it would lead to student success. Now, I assume most of you know what Padlet is. If you don't know, it is a digital bulletin board type of a system where students can add text, images, videos, TikToks, PowerPoint slides, any type of document that you can link, you could add into a Padlet. So thinking about this, Christian and I thought, well, we could perhaps get better engagement with writing in our classes, and also community building, because in Padlet, when students share something, it would be shared with the entire classroom. And so our idea was, will they put more effort into their homework if they know everybody's going to look at it? So those were our 2 objectives, or 2 premises. And of course, trying to quantify that was a bit of a conundrum, because how do you really evaluate quality, because students over a semester would improve in their work. So is that due to the teaching in the class, or is it due to the Padlet? How many Padlets can you do in the class before students tell you, we want to do regular homework now, please? And of course, you can't really quantify community, because how do you verify that they're really interacting other than just looking at comments? And then you get into, well, if the comments are graded, so students have to write comments, is that really community building? So there were a lot of little kinks that we needed to work out. So to do this, we worked with parallel sections of the same class. So Christian worked with a elementary 1 French group of 2 sections, and I worked with 2 sections of elementary 2. And we divided our 2 sections into control group and Padlet group. But to avoid this Padlet overload, we switched them back and forth, and also to get a better sort of randomized data from it. So we did 4 to 5 Padlets per semester, in each class. So here you have an image of a Padlet in elementary 2. Early on in the semester, we were talking about food, and each student had to write a little Padlet about their food preferences. And I thought that worked really well. They really did write more than the other group. And in class, we were able to do a presentation where each student came up and sort of impromptu presented their food preferences. So that was really fun, and it was not possible to do that with the other class who had submitted the work just through Blackboard, regular homework. In the other image, you have a Padlet from later on in the semester where students wrote about environmental problems that preoccupy them. And you can tell, the text here is a little bigger, but you can tell that we have a lot more text, so written production is
French?
more significant. Sorry.
Is the text French?
Yes, everything is in French. And of course, quality-wise, for some of the, at this level, we didn't do multiple versions or had students revise it. It's just the text that the students submitted. But in more advanced classes, I did a little bit of that. So if we can advance to the next slide. This is a summary of Padlets that I used in Intro to Literature. This is a 3000 level course. And in this class, of course, I only had 1 section, so there was no ability to do a control group, and I didn't really get to compare regular homework with Padlet homework because they were having more substantial compositions to write, and I really didn't want to overload the students with homework. So what I was able to do with this, actually, if you click on Padlet, we could go to the site called Flip. And, oops, sorry, that's good. And so in here, we worked on L'étranger by Camus, so we were able to do a chronology of L'étranger. We did part 1. If you click on this one, it'll just keep opening different, yeah. So each student contributed as they were reading the text. Every time they saw a time indicator, they added a little note in Padlet. And we were able to reconstruct, especially in the first chapter, the chronology is quite convoluted and it is not linear. And they had not noticed that until we went back and looked, oh wait, he's actually recounting this a few days later and he's going back and it's back and forth, back and forth. So that was really interesting for those students. If we go back to the summary, on poems and audio, this is something that I did to help the class with poetry. They were really struggling with phonetic diction for poems in French is notoriously difficult. How do you really get an Alexandrin? How do you understand it and so on? So to help them, if you each of these scrolls down, so for each poem that we analyzed in detail, I provided 4 versions of the poem. A modern recitation, one that was done by a professional, and 2 musical versions, because you can really hear the music of the Alexandrin and the vowels that are and are not pronounced. So I think this was really a success. Students were really using it and were having fun with it. And even now I have students who are studying poetry and they'll come and say, do you have any resources? And I just send them to the Padlet. So that one was particularly fun. Back to the summary. I have also used the Padlet as a bulletin board for questions, really, where I created a Padlet, embedded it into Blackboard, and told students, if you come up on something that is unclear, put it in there as a question, and I get a notification, I have a Padlet app, and I immediately answer it, so the entire class is able to collaborate, and then people go in on that and continue on the thread. So that was really fun. And we even did, so we use it for, like this one, Morel Familier, that's a poem analysis that they did. So this was at 3,000 level, so they write a lot more, as you can see. And based on this, then some of the students did revisions that they turned in as text from the text they submitted in the Padlet. So I thought this was quite fun, and we did a couple more of this type of thing. So going back to just the slides, if we could go to the next one. For some results, so unfortunately the 3,000 level class, there was no control group, so I can't really tell you if they did better because of the Padlet, but they all wrote in that Padlet bilan, the outcome, that they loved using it, so that was very rewarding. But in the elementary 2 class, this is some of the data that I compiled and analyzed. I looked at various homework assignments throughout the semester, and as I mentioned, quantity went up, quality also went up. But what was really interesting was traditional homework versus Padlet. This is in week 6 of the semester. A regular homework assignment produced an average of 127 words, whereas a Padlet production had 179 words on average per submission. So this is a difference of 52 words, which is a whopping 40% increase while using Padlet. And I was quite impressed with that. Of course, there are some considerations to think about as you use Padlet. I have 2 minutes. One of them is if you're using personal information like I did here. This was a daily routine timeline. And I think the students really liked doing the timeline because they could have all the times in the day and what they do. But I was very careful to keep this private. So I created an individual Padlet for each student. This one isn't linked. But you can tell each student had their own Padlet that was only visible to them because I didn't want to share that information with everybody else in the class. Other things where it's not so personal, they could share. And I was very pleased with the result on that. So to conclude, overall, the written production really did improve using Padlet. Quantity and quality, but again, there's a little bit of bias in there because they will improve over a semester. But what was really pleasing was the engagement with writing in the target language. And some of the other TAs who used Padlet in their classes also told me that after introducing these, they noticed that on tests there were no longer blank sections in the essay portion. And that was quite astonishing. So going forward this semester, I am doing something similar with a 2013 class, so intermediate 2, and I have 2 sections, so I can do the control and the Padlet, and hopefully the results will be repeated. So it is sort of an ongoing thing, and Gabby is involved with that and creating Padlets with me. So I will keep you posted on what happens this semester. Thank you so much.
endeavors.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Cheyenne, and also thanks to Curtis for thinking that this was worth presenting, because I have to admit I'm feeling a little sheepish after these two wonderful presentations from my colleagues. Mine is fairly simple, but I study the French Middle Ages. And as a medievalist, I'm really interested in the intersection of digital humanities and manuscript studies. And in this day and age, more and more libraries are digitizing their manuscripts. So we have this really, this multitude of really easily accessible, authentic materials to use, not just for our research, but also in the classroom. And so what I want to talk to you guys about today is how I use digitized manuscripts in my graduate course, Old French Literature, while also utilizing our space here in the studio. So last semester in my graduate course, I incorporated a paleography project where my students would use digitized manuscripts easily accessible online to transcribe portions of the literature that they were then going to read in class. The point of this was, on one hand, selfish, because I had just gotten back from a month-long program in New Mexico where I studied paleography, so I was really eager to share that with my students. So paleography, the study of historical writing or historical handwriting, this was a very small component of the project, because if anyone's familiar with paleography, almost all of the texts were written in Caroline minuscule. But one skill that students did develop was their ability to read Caroline minuscule over and over and over again. Another very small portion of this project was also studying codicology, recognizing certain features of manuscripts and codices, old books. For example, this hole in the parchment, where you can, well, I don't know if anyone can even read that far, but there's no break in the text. So from that, we can know that this is not manuscript damage. It was made during either the animal was injured or it was made during the preparation of the parchment. So the scribe just wrote around it. Also, a big important factor in in having my students complete these assignments was to talk about critical editions. Why what they were transcribing may not necessarily correspond to what they were reading in their books. And to prepare for this, Professor Manuel Omero-Gobante came to class to give a guest lecture on his own critical edition of El Valiente Negro en Flandes, which just came out, by the way, now. Yes. And he taught us how to read, or how to use critical apparatus using his own as a model. Students also developed real professional transcription skills. They were given guidelines on what conventions to follow in their transcriptions. But the main point of these assignments was to build Old French reading proficiency. Because if you're reading a modern French medieval text, it's a translation, it's not the original authentic language. And these students wrote these beautiful midterm projects and final projects where they engaged with philological aspects of the text. And in order to do that, you need to be using the original language. So to that end, I think we can go to the next slide. Yes, to that end, I arranged with Curtis to be able to use the New Line touchscreen, this guy right here, because it became pretty apparent early on that our screen in the classroom was just not going to cut it if we were going to be studying these manuscripts. So we came into the studio every 3 to 4 weeks to work on these transcriptions, to work on reading these manuscripts. And what we were able to do, we were able to zoom in as big as we needed to. But, and you can see Gabby and Grace here in this totally real and not at all staged photo. Saying, ooh, a macron, what could that represent? Ooh, let's zoom in on it and try to figure it out. But the coolest thing that we were able to do with this is what you can see Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Totally real and not at all staged. Tracing the outlines of these letters if there were words that we couldn't read or had trouble figuring out. We actually went in and followed the same pathways as these medieval scribes. Gabby's helping him there. I think we can go to the next one. This is Grace and Ryan still trying to figure out what is that macron, and Gabby's face when she finally figured out, oh, it's an M. And so the one big drawback of this project, and Ryan can attest to this, is that it was pretty time consuming. We had to go through all the, just look at this one line right here. Look at all the symbols in there. What does that even mean? So we had to go through these before students were able to figure out what these words, or what these symbols actually represented. And also, one feature of the interfacing is that we couldn't just, when we were finished with one portion of the manuscript page, we couldn't just scroll down if we were writing on it. We had to open up the whiteboard, mark up, exit out, scroll up, open up the whiteboard again, write, exit out. I think though that we kind of figured out during our photo shoot this week that was because I had my laptop hooked up. We might be able to resolve that feature just by using the touchscreen itself. But also, I think the next time I do this project, I'll work with Cheyenne and Curtis to reserve the new line regularly every so often so that students can come in and work on it on their own outside of class. Next slide. So moving forward, so as I said, I'm really interested in the intersection of DH and manuscript studies. So moving forward, I'd like to incorporate even more of these medieval manuscripts to teach my students about medieval writing practices and also medieval reading practices. So medieval writing practices, there are so many resources online to walk you through all the stages of preparing a manuscript. I have here the Getty Museum, for example, has a 6-minute video that'll take you through from preparing the parchment itself into the order in which a scribe would then add in the text, the images, and the illuminations, and the gold plating and such. And to that end, I've included here images that students can engage with. This manuscript is really cool because it features illustrations that tell the narrative chronologically, so it's almost like a comic book, the way the story is being told in the images. This one here, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but as an example of the stages of the manuscript preparation process, this scribe hasn't effaced his ruling of his lines and his justification of the margins. And as far as medieval reading practices, I have here some examples of marginal writings, which I think here is even a variant reading, almost as if this much later handwriting has two manuscripts that they're comparing side by side, and they added in the variant. But I love this feature, this particularly quirky feature of this manuscript, is that in this image we have one of Arthur's knights rescuing a lion from a dragon. And the dragon has the lion's tail caught in its mouth, so in order to save the lion, he has to cut off its tail. And someone has gone in and added tails to all the P's and Q's at the bottom of these manuscript pages. So what I would really like to do is have students keep all of these practices in mind as they make their own manuscripts. On the next slide, Cheyenne. So, so these graduate students created their own commonplace books, so engaging with medieval and early modern reading culture. We made our own manuscripts on the first day of class. We folded up a legal-sized paper into an octavo and then cut open the pages. And then over the course of the semester, they added in their favorite quotes, doodles that were inspired by their readings. Maria mentioned Christian Rosales, and if anyone knew him, it would be of no surprise to you that this is his commonplace book. But I also did the same thing in my advanced French course, French 3003, but they had to use their octavo to write a fairy tale. So you can see that this student has added in a story an initial, marginal glosses, a manicule, illuminations, things like that. So I would really like to continue this study of the intersection of DH and MRST by having my students engage more closely with just this wide array of digitized manuscripts available to us in order to expand on these projects. And I think that's all I have. So I think I'm on one last slide. Yes, thanks to Grace, Ryan, and Gabby.
I represent So I represent the cultures part of world languages, literatures, and cultures. And when I'm not in the classroom teaching Latin here at the University of Arkansas, I'm in Italy in the dirt doing archaeological work. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about how we integrate digital technologies into our field project. Hang on with me because there's a few I want to go through. So please move forward. So first, just a quick introduction to this project. So the Martzwillow Archaeological Project is an international multi-institutional project that I co-direct with my colleagues, Dr. Astrid Van Ooyen, swinging the pickaxe here, at Radboud University in the Netherlands, and Gijs Tol, who is our ceramicist, our lab guy, who is at the University of Melbourne. So this brings together students, specialists, and directors from America, Europe, Australia, and we have Italians and Belgians and Dutch and UK people all working together. So move forward. So the point of the project, our focus, is a high-resolution study of a small Roman nucleated center which is located in south-central Tuscany in Italy. And the site itself, which you can see here, is located on an alluvial plateau that overlooks the Orcia River, which runs out to the coast, connects with the Ambrone and runs out to the coast. And this site is located in a strategic transitional landscape between the villa economies and urbanized centers on the coast, and then the hilly interior that you think of when you think of Tuscany. And so they're at this sort of juncture bridging those two different landscapes. And then if you go forward, we actually think that this site functioned in that transitional space as a sort of Sam's Club, as a sort of service center, warehousing, commercial distribution, communal agricultural processing plant. And it brought products in from the coast, and it distributed them out into the countryside. But one of our most miraculous discoveries to date was a Roman blacksmith woodworking workshop. And the site, unfortunately for them, burned down in the mid-1st century AD while it was still in use. And that destruction, ironically, preserved the workshop in a high level of detail. We found no bodies, so the blacksmith and his assistants made it out, but they left everything behind, including the, if you go forward, blacksmith tongs that were left leaning against the wall of the workshop, and his entire assemblage of tools, as well as his products that he was either repairing or recycling or producing. And sorry, these slides are actually flipped. So you can see a zoomed out version of this complex in which we have the blacksmithing workshop, as well as evidence for warehousing. We found over 400 complete ceramic vessels waiting for distribution, hydraulic installations, and this summer, in this area, a room where they were storing agricultural equipment like this sickle. So actually, if you could go back one slide to this. So one of the digital technologies that we use on this project is a total station to geospatially record the evidence that we find in the field. And by using a total station in a prism, the total station essentially shoots a laser at the prism, we're able to take a super accurate within millimeters point in horizontal and vertical space of everything we find and import that data into ArcGIS and create maps like this. So this is a map I created of the blacksmith workshop showing the exact location of all the artifacts found, as well as the features, the installation, the hearth bottoms, the depressions where they had the anvil placed, the location of charcoal stains where they had piled up their fuel, and also the extents of hammer scale accumulation from hammering the metal objects. The flakes of iron fall off the anvil and gather up on the ground. And by doing this, by studying this plan, we were able to basically integrate production processes, products, and people to reconstruct a living workshop where we are able to say the blacksmith stood here, his anvil was here, his forge was here, his charcoal was here, and he was right-handed because of the way that the hammer scale accumulated on the stone. So that's a level of detail that's incredibly impressive. And if you go forward, again, thank you, we can also do things with geospatial recording, like look at the spatial distribution of artifacts. So we treat every nail we find, and we find a lot of them, as a special artifact, and it gets a georeferenced point. And our metallurgist, Alexander Agostini, typologized our nails, which almost drove him crazy, but he did it. And then our geospatial specialist, Matteo Barone, he plotted the distribution of the different types of nails, and as you can see, this horseshoe-looking fixture, is what I'm going to say, has a different spatial distribution than this long, curved nail here, and that starts to tell us something about the functions of these nails, and also, very importantly, gives us insight into how the roof and the superstructure of our complex was reconstructed. Okay, please go forward. So in addition to the geospatial recording and ArcGIS mapping, we also do 3D modeling on this project. We use photogrammetry in the field to create 3D objects from 2D photographs. And these 3D objects are highly accurate records of the different features and artifacts on our site. So one type of photogrammetry is what's called terrestrial, which basically means use a handheld camera, and you have a feature, like a wall or a table, and you take photographs from different angles as you go around it, like this, and you take a bunch of them, and then you import those into a program like Metashape, which is what we use, and Metashape turns those 2D photos into that 3D model. And then using the total station, you can georeference that model, so you can import that model into ArcMap, and it puts it exactly where it should be in the real world. So if you go forward, we also use handheld photogrammetry to create digital records of our artifacts, not all of them, but a selection of them. And this is incredibly important because the metal assemblage that we found is one of the only complete assemblages of a Roman blacksmith in the Roman world. And they were badly corroded, and we dug them up, put them in our damp, humid storage unit, COVID hit, and we couldn't get back to them for 2 years. Not great. So we had a grant that we were able to conserve these objects, so they're stabilized now, but the digital records make this assemblage more accessible to a wider global audience than the artifacts themselves, and it allows researchers to interact with these objects in a way that is less invasive or destructive to the objects themselves. So this is Tom Heap. He's our 3D modeling specialist. He's a PhD student at University of Melbourne, and he has been photo modeling our objects and also reconstructing them. So we have the model of the actual object, but then we also have an interpretive reconstruction of what it might have looked like. Please go forward. And he, for his dissertation, is combining all these types of digital evidence. So he's taking our spatial data and our 3D models, and if you go forward, he has created a virtual reality application of our blacksmith workshop, what it might have looked like in the moments before it burned down in the mid-1st century AD. And at the moment, this is sort of a panoramic, so you can put on the headset, and you can't walk around, but you can look around from different vantage points. And the goal is he has to finish his dissertation. So sometime in the future, making it more interactive where you could actually walk into the workshop and pick up the tools And there's features in there where you click on a tool and up pops information about it, and you can toggle between the reconstruction and the actual 3D models of the excavation and these sorts of things. So this is really neat. Now he brought this alpha version to Italy this past summer, and we tested it right on site during a community visit. So here's one of our local Italians in Tuscany on our site testing out this VR headset. The idea behind this is to create an educational package where we give this to the local schools, the elementary schools and middle schools, so that they can engage with their local cultural heritage. And this is super important for our site because our site is on private land. So we bury everything we find every summer. It's not accessible. So the only records that exist of our site at the end of each season are the digital records that the artifacts, we don't throw those back, we keep artifacts, but the digital records, right? Keep going forward, I'm getting close to that. Third type of photogrammetry that we do is UAV photogrammetry. And this is a new addition to our workflow, and it was introduced by Arai Khan, who's my MA student in anthropology, who joined us in the back. And in 2022, he developed the methodology and the workflow for using a drone to take to do 3D modeling on the site, and this has produced important digital records, but it's also important for mapping and things like this. So if you move forward. So here's Arai in action, and as part of his MA thesis here, he is refining the models from the drone photogrammetry, and he is publishing them on an online platform called Sketchfab, where they can be accessible to anyone for free, and he's annotating them with information. So, and actually, could you click one more? Because this actually, maybe we'll start. Yeah, there we go. So you can actually zoom in, you can put a VR headset on, and you can walk across the surface of this model as if you are there, and the different information points help you, non-archaeologists out there, understand what it is you're seeing and why it's important. One more. So all of this is to say that these are a few digital methods that we've been using in our research project. But our research project is incredibly student-centered. So I normally take between 3 to 4 University of Arkansas undergrad and graduate students with me each summer. And you don't need experience. We teach you these methods and techniques, how to excavate. And we also try to teach students basic digital field skills. And so here, an important part of our project are our 3D modeling specialists and geospatial specialists doing a tutorial for our students on these methods so they can take them back into the classroom or into their research. I think that's it. There's one more slide for acknowledgements, and I definitely want to point out thanks to Tom Keep and Mateo and Arai, whose work is featured here, but also to CAST, who I received a Spark Award in 2016. CAST helped us set up our digital workflow. And so without them, it's evolved a lot in the last, since 2016, but without that award, this digital aspect of the project wouldn't be possible. So that's it.
Thank you. You guys did awesome. These are super cool projects, and I'm looking forward to doing more. But we have a little bit of time left before the dinner starts, so if anybody has any questions for our presenters, feel free to ask questions, just an open discussion. And one of our studio researchers will moderate while I go check on something really quick. So please feel free to start asking questions, and
I'll start off because I have a question for you, Annie. I like this idea of experimental archaeology, almost like the making of manuscripts, and how maybe tracing the letters of the lines in the manuscript, can that give you insight into how they may have held their ink pen, or how hard they were pressing, or what angle they were pressing at?
Totally.
Yes.
And I mean, part of the study of paleography is even knowing how they shaped how they cut their quills to make these certain shapes. And as Ryan was up there tracing the letters, I was thinking to myself, oh man, if only the new line had different shapes.
Yeah.
Stylus.
Out, like
Yes.
thick, thin, right?
Yes, so that's absolutely unfortunate, but traceability.
Yeah, I was wondering about the archaeology. Was this like a family homestead? Was this a village? What's the size?
It's a really good question. So it's 2 hectares, and I never remember hectare to acre. 0.4. So what would that be? 2 hectares is like.
About 5 acres.
Right. And that's based on, the site was discovered in 2007 through field survey, so that means just walking through the field and seeing what the plows